guys, Fuse here from Fuse Travels, back with some more tips about traveling to Europe, especially for spring break and maybe fall or even summer. In today's video, I want to chat about my Lisbon to Seville road trip that I did with my family last year for spring break. Now, I love traveling to Europe during spring break because it is the shoulder season. So you'll find great flight deals, like even less than $700, which is exactly what we did. I always love to compare Google Flights with Expedia bundle packages. Now, in this case, we were able to find the flight by itself to be more affordable, and for accommodations in Lisbon and Seville, we ended up using both Expedia and Booking.com because we really needed an apartment. We were traveling with 5 people. So one thing to keep in mind when going to Portugal or Spain in March or in the spring, and you want to keep your costs low, is to really look at how many people you have, because the hotel rooms are small, so it will be more cost effective for you to stay at an apartment, which was exactly what we did in Lisbon. In Lisbon, we stayed at the neighborhood Baixa, which is closer to the Praça de Comércio, which is where you'll see that tower and by the water. We actually were also within walking distance of Time Out Market, which was really great, and also not too far from the ferry, where we visited the beautiful restaurant over on the other side called Ponto Final. So for our accommodations, we ended up booking an apartment with 1 bedroom, but the living room had literally 3 beds. The sofas became these huge beds, so it was great for our 3 teens. They even had like this pillow party, pillow tossing party, fight, and it was awesome. So anytime we go to Europe with family and we're staying at an apartment that has a mini kitchen or a kitchen, we first hit up the supermarket. This is another great way to save, especially for breakfast. Now, this apartment where we stayed had little knickknacks for breakfast and snacks, which I thought was so cool, and came fully equipped. You can see some of the images of the space that we stayed at below, and you could book it using my link in the description. Now, Lisbon has lots to do, and I'm going to do a whole separate video about our trip and exactly what to do in Lisbon with teens, some ideas, itineraries, and suggestions for you guys. So essentially, we stayed 3 full days, or I think actually it was 4 nights in Lisbon, which allowed us to do the day trip to Sintra, also allowed us one day to more explore the Belém area and to do the top sightseeing things in Lisbon itself. Now let's talk about the actual road trip. In planning the road trip, I wanted to stop by somewhere on our way to Spain. So I knew the Algarve would be pretty, and I'm like, oh, maybe we could get like a coastal view for our road. So in speaking to a friend of mine who's a writer, Sylvia, she suggested we stop by Carvoeiro, which is in the Algarve region. First I was going to do Albufeira, but she said that might be a little packed. This is a small fishing village and it was perfect. We did have to park. It was still a little hard to find, even though it's like technically very slow season. It wasn't packed at all. We stopped by for lunch at this restaurant, which had on top, I think it's called Levels, which had, they serve different things at each floor, if that makes sense. It was delicious, yummy, a little bit higher price than what we're used to, but it was fine. It was just a nice experience. It was a pleasant, sunny day. Now, to go to Carvoeiro, it did take us off our track a little bit, because if you look in Google Maps, with the stop in Carvoeiro before getting to Seville, it's about 5.5 hours. I think if you go straight from Lisbon to Seville, I'll confirm, maybe it's 4.5. Anyway, we went out. We weren't in a rush, right? We knew our check-in wouldn't be till later. So it's up to you to really, plan out that travel day, if that makes sense. Now, let's talk about renting a car. This is a really important part of this video. If you don't get any other tip, please pay attention here, okay? Like, pay attention. When renting a car in Europe, first of all, there's going to be some high deposit fees. So sometimes when you are in Expedia or different car companies, you can check. In Greece and Italy and other countries, I've actually used more local companies, which ended up being more affordable. This time around, that wasn't the case. One brand of car rental companies that I do like in Europe, it's Sixt. I think they're starting to have it here in the United States. So when we rented the car, we were having a little bit of difficulty because we didn't want a big SUV. You know, we knew we were going to do the main drive from Lisbon to Seville. And in Seville, we were going to park the car and not use the car there because we needed the car to drive back. So what ended up happening was when we got there, our car almost did not fit the luggage. So the number one tip is count how many people, count how many pieces of luggage that you have, and make sure that the car you're getting makes sense for all of that and can fit all of that. So as you can see here, we had a little bit of difficulty. It was a little weird, but we got it. We made it. So keep in mind, credit card is best, but usually the deposit fees are high. That's like all over the world now. It's just, it is what it is. We didn't tell them we were going to Spain because they didn't ask, and our package did have unlimited mileage. So I didn't think that would be a problem. Now let's talk about tolls. Were there tolls on our way there? Yes, but actually it was tolls more on the Portugal side. Once we crossed over to Spain, we really didn't see tolls. And there is no like official border checkpoint thing when you cross over. So the car does come equipped with a toll reader machine. We didn't actually have to stop and use our card as we've done in Italy, but we did get a bill later for the toll. So it's very common for a bill to come later. One thing to note before you leave that car rental building, please take photos of everything around the car, take videos, because these cars in Europe are banged up. Like we once rented a car, I'm going to put a photo here. Like I could not believe this car. Now it was kind of last minute. We were on the grind because I ended up going to booking at one airport and we were at another airport. But I just wanted to show them so they wouldn't think, you know, that I would be liable for all those scratches and all that hot mess express that the car was. So you want to be mindful. They drive kind of crazy. Scratches are common. Accidents are common among them. So the guy was like, yeah, no problem. We know that the car is like all banged up. So you really want to also really investigate the car, take pictures, take photos. You just want to have that documented in order to prevent anything in the future. Was the drive easy? Yes. Another thing to note, when you rent a car, they do have a lot of stick shift cars. My husband knows how to drive stick shift. I actually right now can't remember if it was stick shift. It might have been, because that's another saving tip hack. But the drive was actually very pleasant. There wasn't a lot of traffic. Again, this was in March. It was just smooth sailing, not a lot of traffic until we got to Seville. So when we got to Seville, we knew we were being city center. And one thing about when you're in the city center of towns like Lisbon, like Seville, Rome, and stuff, they have like no drive zones and restrictive zones because these are historical towns and whatnot. So what we did was I had looked up parking places before, but I always ask the accommodation place. So we rented another Seville apartment in Seville, and I asked them where the nearest parking garages were, and they gave me a tip. Now, when we got there, we had reserved online, but when we got there, the reservation weren't there, but it still all worked out. The parking spots, let me tell you, it was the tiniest thing. You have to be so careful. It was just rough parking that car. Thank God my husband's an excellent driver, but that's something else you need to keep in mind, that parking and garage is like a little crazy. The other thing you want to keep in mind is that expense, right? Because technically we're paying for 2 days of the parking garage, which I can't remember off the top of my head, but I will leave, if you comment below, if you really want to know this information, I will look it up for you. Just definitely subscribe. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and right below so I can find that information for you. I remember it wasn't that expensive as we initially thought it would be. And we were just glad the car was there and not scratched after our 2 nights that we stayed in Seville. Okay. Once we arrived in Seville, we parked it. We did not look at that car until we had to drive back. Now, Driving back from Seville back to Lisbon, you have other route options. So instead of going back through the southern Portugal and the beaches, we decided to visit the lovely, charming small town of Évora, which was amazing. So we were kind of tossing around the idea of like, do we travel back on the day we're going to catch the flight, or do we stay somewhere else the night before? So we had a few options, and we decided to wake up in Seville, drive to Évora. I'm going to put here the distance as well as how long that was. And once we got to Évora, we also had to find the parking there was also unique. We had asked our accommodations place as well. So we had to actually pay like metered parking until a certain time, which was fine. It was like very doable, and we did a little bit of walking. So my husband dropped us off with the bags closer to the accommodation, and then he went on to park and then walked back. We did a little sightseeing, a little exploring. We people watched, we had food and relaxed, right? It was just like a very relaxing day. The next day we woke up early and went straight to the airport where we were going to do the car drop off anyway. So that worked out. Speaking of car drop off, we didn't pick it up at the airport. We picked it up at another location. And when we dropped it off, we did drop off of the airport. So we were able to do that. So you want to keep in mind also that price will change depending where you're going to drop off the car when you come back. Overall, I really like this itinerary. It was so nice because we got to pretty much visit 2 new towns in between our road trip. Seville was wonderful. I'm going to do another video about that, what to do with your family in 2 days. Actually, I think it was 3 because we did end up going to Cordoba as well. Overall, it was just such a lovely trip. I strongly recommend Portugal and Spain, and Lisbon to Seville is amazing to do. And yes, you can also do this route by train. There's other transportation options for you to go. For us, since it was the 5 of us, it was just a lot easier to drive there, and it gave us the flexibility to visit those other locations. All right, guys, Fuse here helping you travel to Europe stress-free.